Welcome to the Wednesday student presentations for Honors Week 2012. It's very nice to see such a large and committed audience, so we're thrilled to have you here. We will proceed without further ado. I'm going to let Dr. Rose come in, and she'll come in. Our first presenter will be Michelle Callaghan, who's an English major. Michelle is recommended by Professor Robinson, and she'll be talking about the sixth chamber, Blake's anxiety about the limitations of writing.
Hi, once again, my name is Michelle Callaghan, and so my paper is entitled "The Sixth Chamber: Blake's Anxiety About the Limitations of Writing." A brief intro into the romantic poet William Blake, for those unfamiliar. He was born in 1757 in London, England, and died in 1827. He was considered totally insane by his peers and contemporaries because he's got a really wild and wacky philosophy. It's really fluid and kind of hard to pin down, but I tried to find a passage that I thought illustrated his ideas in a way that was meaningful to me. And I chose a passage from his piece, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and it reads, "Then I asked, does a firm persuasion that a thing is so make it so? He replied, all poets believe that it does, and in ages of imagination this firm persuasion removed bounds, but many are not capable of a firm persuasion of anything." I believe that Blake thinks a firm persuasion that a thing is so, makes it real. But of course, a life philosophy such as this leaves a person with a really tenuous grasp on reality. So I think that this philosophy fed his growing anxiety about writing and language and the way writing is inadequate and possibly incapable of ever truly and thoroughly communicating a specific idea. There's a disconnect in how we humans communicate through language. Think about it. As soon as we acquire words for our feelings, the words begin to create our feelings. Can we think without words? Or can we have an idea without labeling it? And when we do label it, does it start to change? I'm coming to the conclusion that finding the perfect word is impossible. Where are the words that can label a precise emotion or words that ferry a specific emotion from the writer's brain to the page, and then when the reader reads that page, yanks that exact emotion from the reader's brain? For a multitude of reasons, it can't happen. And this idea is becoming my pet topic in English. And some writers realize that their words are of limited capability and are even tortured by it, and I am obsessed with finding that evidence in their writing. The Blake piece that cued me into his particular anxiety about writing is another memorable fancy page from the same piece, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which I'm going to quickly read. "I was in a printing house in hell, and saw the method in which knowledge is transmitted from generation to generation. In the first chamber was a dragon man, clearing away the rubbish from a cave's mouth. Within, a number of dragons were hollowing the cave. In the second chamber was a viper, folding round the rock in the cave, and others adorning it with gold, silver, and precious stones. In the third chamber was an eagle with wings and feathers of air. He caused the inside of the cave to be infinite. Around were numbers of eagle-like men, who built palaces in the immense cliffs. In the fourth chamber were lines of flaming fire raging around and melting the metals into living fluids. In the fifth chamber were unnamed forms, which cast the metals into the expanse. There they were received by men who occupied the sixth chamber, and took the form of books and were arranged in libraries." You could sense the drastic change in mood from the descriptions of the first 5 chambers compared to the sixth chamber. All of the magic, all of the ethereal and fantastical dragon men and vipers and silver and gold gets put into books, inks on paper and plain old books, and stacked into library shelves. There's almost a sense of imprisonment and a definite awareness of limitation. This is only one of several examples I pulled out in my paper, but I'd like to move on to how Blake attempted to compensate for the limitations of writing. As I should have mentioned earlier, but did. Blake was also an artist as well. He printed his own works in his own print shop and had total control over his final product. Because I think in a perfect world, he would have liked to control exactly how people interpret his writing, down to a T. But he knew, even though he was a little insane, that this was impossible. So he used other modes of expression, painting, and sometimes even music to get his ideas out to other people. These are 2 examples of what are called his Illuminated Works, and all of them are uniquely handmade. The first is the cover to The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and the second is the passage I just read. How he made these was he would create copper plates so that the drawings were embossed, and then ink them, print them, and then watercolor. So that there were not that many copies, but they were all very unique and had different characteristics. To be clear though, Blake didn't create these illuminated works just for pretty decorations. Most times his illustrations have a direct effect, sometimes an imposing effect, on how the accompanying poem is interpreted. I chose this example of Tiger because it kind of makes me laugh. This is to the poem Tiger, 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 very bright. A lot of people are familiar with it. And the poem itself paints an image of a fearsome creature with dread claws, and the text itself creates a very fearful image. But check out this little guy's face. He looks like a little kitten who got caught chewing on houseplants. So he's not that scary. Clearly we're supposed to do something a little different with the text here. Maybe treat it with skepticism or irony. My paper on Blake was admittedly out there, like Blake, and got into some weird time and space things and like physiological processes and reading, but I won't get into that here. Overall, I'm continuing to explore this whole language anxiety business, sometimes in these ways. From a literary perspective, I like to find evidence in works of literature which reveal the author is aware that his or her chosen tool of communication, writing, is limited or inadequate. So this could either be like frustrated passages or even direct comments about the purpose of language. I liked philosophy of language, which sometimes about the specific ways in which language is limited, such as do thoughts create language or do language create thought, or both. I like looking from a linguistic perspective at language acquisition, especially in different languages, and how the similarities and differences of those acquisitions, what they imply about the adequacy of words. And my favorite, and this is kind of a new one, is a cognitive perspective, and it's cognitive theory related to how writing can create a sense of immersion or empathy, etc. And that's a really new field, so it's really hard to find research on it. I love it. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next speaker will be Gareth Cooper, who is a Management Information System major. He was recommended by Professor Jungian, who's here, I believe, today. And he will be speaking on analysis of soccer substitutions.
Like she said, my name is Gareth Cooper. I did a substitution analysis on Widener University because, just to give you a background on myself, I was captain of the team here for the last 2 years, and I wanted to get maybe like an insight, maybe help the team out a little bit, and find out a way to better our results. Because as you can see, our record was not very good. 3, 13, and 2, not ideal for your senior year, but I wanted to compare it to Lebanon Valley because the reason I did this was my younger brother's on the team, and we played them later in the season, and I figured maybe get some sort of advantage over them, hopefully beat them because last 2 years they beat us, and so I wanted to figure out what went wrong with our team, and just try to figure out like some sort of analysis that would help us. And so what I did was I collected the data from both Widener and Lebanon Valley's athletic sites. They have play-by-play data that I collected, and it shows the time of every event, such as like goals, assists, and then it has substitutions, and it has the time of those substitutions. So I looked at these, and I broke it down by, I had Widener, and then looked at all their opponents together as a group. I didn't do it individually by each team. And what I did, and the same thing with Lebanon Valley and their opponents. And what I did was I looked at the substitution, the time of the substitution, and 5 minutes after that time. And within that 5-minute window, I looked at the headers, corners, shots, and goals. And so just say Widener had a shot within 5 minutes of that substitution, that would count as a positive result for Widener. But maybe Widener's playing their opponent, and the opponent has a shot in that time, it would count as a negative result. and then if nothing happened within that 5-minute window, it would just go down as no effect. And so, obviously, with LBC having a much better record, I expected their positive results to be much higher than Widener's, and Widener's negative results to be higher than mine. So here's the first graph I have. This is Widener versus their opponents. And like you can see, positive results, Widener is less than their opponents, but not significantly amount that you would think, a team with such a poor record, you would think it would be a lot worse, but it's not terrible. And then the negative results is a little bit less, or a little bit higher, I'm sorry, about 5% higher than their opponents. But again, like not terrible, just kind of, I mean, just from my perspective, from the team, like we were in every game. It was like really close, but it's tough. We lost most of our games by 1 goal. So, looking at Lebanon Valley, this was really interesting because you would think them having 4 wins above 500 that they would be better than their opponents. But as you can see on the left side, the positives, they had much less positive results than their opponents. So you would think they would have had a losing record, at least based on substitutions. And then the negative results, they had much more negative results than their opponent, which is surprising. And then I just compared the two numbers just to show you. And these numbers are almost identical, which is crazy considering they had 9 more wins than us. So you would think their numbers would be much better than the positive and much less than the negative. But that's not the case, as you can tell from this graph. And then I did a chi-squared analysis. Chi-squared is used, it's a measurement to based on expectations compared to the results. And so what happens is if it's a significant, if there's a significant difference, which is having the p-value less than 0.05 or at least close to 0.05 in this case, which I'll show you in a sec, then that means there's something to show from that. But if it's not, it doesn't really tell you anything about the data. So I looked at all 4 teams, compared Widener's opponents, Lebanon Valley's, and their opponents, and found the chi-square value, it was kind of high. But that's just because I measured against 4 teams as opposed to 2. And the p-value was 0.19, so nothing significant there. Widener versus Lebanon Valley, the p-value is 0.99, basically meaning if it's a 1.0, that means they're exactly similar. So 0.99 means they're exactly, almost identical. But that doesn't really tell us anything. Widener versus their opponents, again, p-value 0.26, so doesn't really tell us too much. But the big significant difference here was Lebanon Valley versus their opponents, and we found the p-value was 0.0551, which was very close, and in this case is close enough for us to see something here. But the thing is, that's not what we were expecting, because you would expect Lebanon Valley to have much better results than their opponent. But in this case, their opponent had much better results against them. So that was not what I expected, which means, I can conclude that I can do much more with this analysis, and I do want to, in the future, possibly talk to the coaches. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to my coach about this. Don't want to, ruin his strategies or anything. But I could at least show him this analysis and just be like, you see that his subs didn't really affect too much of the games, at least. Whereas Lebanon Valley subs are clearly not doing anything good for them. If they had a better substitution plan, they'd have even more wins. At least, hopefully, I don't know. But again, like soccer is a sport, just goals. So positive and negatives related to substitutions doesn't necessarily result in wins and losses. But all it takes is 1 goal, 1 shot, and you can win a game like that. And unfortunately, we're on the opposite end of that. But in the future, I could look at individual substitutions, maybe like specific players, see when they came in, see what kind of effects they had. Or I could even look at a bigger window after the substitution. So some might say 5 minutes after the substitution. It's a 90-minute game, so maybe that's not enough time to judge whether that sub had an effect on the game. So maybe open that up to 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm not sure. I have to do further analysis. But that concludes my presentation.
You're waiting for a train that will take you far away. You know where you hope the train will take you, but you can't be sure. But it doesn't matter. In Christopher Nolan's film Inception, Mal Cobb states that this unimportance is due to the romantic notion that she and husband Doc Cobb will be together. Perhaps, however, the real significance of the train is present in its symbolism. To an audience, a train is representative of a journey, or in the Cobb's case, a departure. Viewers of the film make this connection immediately and unconsciously. This is an example of Callaghan's theory of the collective unconscious. Christopher Nolan's Inception borrows recurring themes derived from Callaghan's theory of the collective unconscious, including communal dreams and archetypal imagery. Jung briefly defines his theory in this way. In addition to our immediate consciousness, there exists the second psychic system of collective, universal, and impersonal nature, which is identical in all individuals. In other words, all humans share and have shared since the beginning of time a psychic link through which they share information, thoughts, and even mere samplings of ideas. Richard Linklater's film, Waking Life, addresses the idea through a couple discussing instances of the psychic data transfer. The couple talks about a study done in which a group of people was isolated and given daily crossword puzzles. Their scores were reported. Then the group was given a puzzle that was a day old, having already been answered by thousands of other people. When doing a puzzle for which the answers were already known by other people, the group scores increased dramatically. The man described it as if we're all telepathically sharing our experiences. In Inception, Cobb and Arthur construct a plan to take advantage of the full potential of the collective unconscious. Cobb mentions the theory that humans only use a fraction of their brain while awake, but use 100% during sleep. Dreaming expands the figurative tunnels between the psyches of the dreamers. This point is repeated when use of claims to somnolence both increases brain function and facilitates the connection among dreamers. Thus, dreaming becomes a much more efficient vehicle through which those asleep can communicate. In this way, Cobb and his team take the process of the collective unconscious and manipulate it to suit their needs. There are many instances within the film that imply the allusion to the collective unconscious. In the very first scene, the heist of Saito's secrets, Mal directs her violence towards Arthur because the dream takes place in his subconscious. One man's subconscious is therefore being shared among 3 individuals at the time. In another instance, the question of limits is raised. Cobb tries to refuse any of his team members access to his mind. However, Ariadne successfully penetrates his dreams and subsequently learns of his afflictions. This proves the universality of the collective unconscious. No one is immune to the communal sharing. Nolan also addresses the process of sharing information. In the beginning of the film, extraction and inception seem to be linear. That is, when exploring an untrained subconscious, the extractors can simply continue into dreams which are previously constructed by an architect. Cobb, however, ruins this concept immediately with the first presence of his wife. With the appearance of Mal, Cobb's children, and the train, it is clear that there is a constant trade of subconscious thoughts during inception or extraction. This is vocalized by Ariadne when she confronts Cobb with the assertion, "Every minute we go deeper into Fisher, we go deeper into you." Jungian philosophy includes a subtheory of archetypes. Jung defined 4 main forms of archetypes: the shadow, the self, the anima, and the animus. The shadow is, as its name connotes, the typical image of evil. It reflects deeper elements of our psyche, where latent dispositions which are common to us all arise. It embodies chaos and wildness of character. Mal, as a projection of Cobb's subconscious, is the embodiment of this archetype. One of Cobb's deepest desires is to be with Mal, so her appearance within dreams is Cobb's latent disposition. Mal is the chaos in Cobb's mind and proves to be the proverbial wild card within the subconscious. The imagined Mal within Cobb's subconscious is indeed a shadow of the real Mal. The self is a godlike entity. It is best defined as truly complete and, in some cases, a creator. Ariadne is the archetype of the self. She is complete in her balance of logic and emotion, and more literally, she is the creator of the dream spaces. Ariadne is the balance of the anima and the animus. The animus is a male persona within the female psyche, just as the anima is the female persona within the male psyche. It is clear that Mal is Cobb's anima, being the origin of virtually all emotion within him. The relationship between the anima and the animus is likened to the yin-yang symbol. The black yin represents femininity, while the white yang represents masculinity. The two halves make a whole, and each side is embedded with a small portion of the opposite sex's color. The yin-yang symbol is now a universal symbol and representing harmony and completeness. This is one of the many examples of symbolism which carries a natural message with no need of explanation. An object that carries a universal message, such as the yin-yang symbol, is called an archetypal image. Christopher Nolan makes ample use of archetypal imagery, most poignantly in the totems carried by Cobb, Arthur, and Ariadne. Each chosen object with intentional or unintentional significance to his or her character. Cobb's top is accompanied by the history of belonging to his wife. The choice of a top calls to question the stability of Cobb's mind. Moll and Cobb both use the top as their totem, and it has the same meaning to both. Neither is complete without the other. Moll says this explicitly when Ariadne infiltrates Cobb's subconscious. She asks Ariadne, "Do you know what it is to be a lover, to be half of a whole?" Since Cobb can only be with Moll in the dream world, a dream is the only time when the top is in balance. The arguably most interesting totem is Ariadne's, the vision. The choice of a chess piece is appropriate for her. If the dream worlds are likened to a game of chess, she is the chess player. She creates a world which the pieces navigate and strategizes accordingly. Her choice of a bishop is particularly peculiar. There are two possibilities for her choice of this piece: Ariadne the messenger or Ariadne the confessor. In earlier versions of the game of chess, the bishop's name in Germanic languages translated to messenger in English. This could be a nod towards Ariadne's special position as the mediator between Cobb and his team. She communicates on various occasions her concern for his mental health. The second option is her role as a confessor. She is the only one to whom Cobb tells the truth about Moll. Cobb entrusts Ariadne with his deepest secrets. Christopher Nolan takes a philosophical theory and molds it into a complex fantasy complete with intricacies 10 years in the making. He uses imagery familiar to his audience to broadcast a foreign science fiction concept, plus a complicated love story. In some ways, Nolan seems to draw directly from Jung's theories by acknowledging classic symbols and stereotypical characters. Perhaps he studied Jungian philosophy in preparation for the film, or perhaps his own subconscious drew the theory out of the psychic cache of all the ideas of humanity. Regardless of intentionality, Nolan seamlessly blends creative elements with suddenly familiar ones to submerge his audience into a surreal unawareness of the psychological acrobatics found in Inception.
Our next speakers will be a group recommended by Professor Larson. This group includes Charles Bytheway, who's a business major, Charles Keller, who is an accounting major, Amanda Lutz, who is an accounting major, and Rachel Weller, who is an international business and finance major. They'll be speaking on Around the Costa Rican Business World in 8 days.
Good afternoon. We are the pilot group for the Business Honors Program, and over winter break, we were lucky enough to take a trip to Costa Rica. I'm Charlie Bytheway. I'm Chaz Keller.
I'm Amanda Luz. And I'm Rachel Weller.
As you can see, Costa Rica is an extremely beautiful country, with lush vegetation and varying geographic features. This breathtaking paradise was chosen not only for its scenic views, but more importantly, for its stable and sustainable economy. This economy provided us with a living laboratory for our class to explore various industries, including textiles, high technology, and eco and agro-tourism.
Because we traveled abroad and represented our university, we kept in mind Widener's vision, which puts emphasis on an unparalleled academic environment, innovative approaches to learning, active scholarship, and the preparation of students for responsible citizenship in a global society.
We lived Widener's vision through innovative approaches to learning. One of the ways we did this was through hands-on learning. We used this approach several times throughout the trip as we visited various businesses. One prime example of this can be shown in the first photo here. In this photo, we are at Don Juan's coffee plantation. At the plantation, we had the opportunity to experience hands-on how the manual production of coffee happens. We learned how to tell when the berry was ripe, and we picked the berry from the coffee bushes, peeled the berry off, and then roasted the beans and eventually grinded them. After we grinded the beans, we learned how to package them and weigh them. Not only did we learn about the production process, but we also learned about the distribution process and how this company distributes its product around the world to its customers.
The next photo is Conversational Learning, and pretty much the entire time we were down there, we traveled in a van with our tour guide away, and we traveled to a different city pretty much every day, total of 6 cities, and the entire time we were in the van, Jorge would explain to us different facts about Costa Rica. He would go over stories, history, statistics, and other general info. And it was interesting. We learned a lot. One of the major things he told us about was the growing technology industry and how that was the major profit in their economy for the country, even though ecotourism brings in most of the jobs for the country.
Another learning aspect of this trip was our ability to explore various cities. As Chaz has talked about, we traveled a lot. We traveled every day, and we were lucky enough to have a little bit of time each day to go into the cities and to explore them and to see what they were like. In each town, we took note of the local people, what they enjoyed, how restaurants and shops were set up, and what was in the stores, and how the cities differed based on demographics and geography. The best example of this is San Jose, which is the capital city of Costa Rica. In San Jose, it's a very urbanized area and has many similarities to that of the United States. Things like fashion styles, road systems, and architecture are all comparable to any major U.S. city. However, as we continued our trip, we recognized a decrease in population size and a disassociation with the standards of American life and American culture.
Not only did we partake in innovative approaches to learning, but we were also able to witness Costa Rica's responsible citizenship in a global society. While in Costa Rica, we visited the banana plantation and realized how global this company can be in such a small sector of the world. After speaking with the manager of the plantation, we learned how other countries can influence and shape their marketing techniques and packaging tactics. For example, the market in China calls for the biggest and straightest bananas, and in Argentina, they found that sales went up when they put professional soccer player pictures and stickers on the packaging.
Along our explorations, we recognized how influential the United States has been on Costa Rica. Throughout the country, the U.S. dollar was accepted at every venue. Almost every citizen had a brief knowledge of basic English to listen to and to answer. This was due mostly to how the majority of jobs in Costa Rica are based on tourism. We used their cultural adaptation to inspire us to adapt to their culture as well. One of the ways we did this was through experiencing their traditional foods in local markets, and also interacting with the locals and attempting to speak basic Spanish. In this picture here, we're experiencing tourism through zip lining.
In the final picture on this slide, we talk about global relations a little bit. This picture was taken at Adastra Rocket Factory. It is a subsidiary of a rocket factory in Texas. The founder was originally from Costa Rica. He got his citizenship from the U.S. so he could become part of NASA, and now he works with them and with other corporations worldwide to build these plasma engines. And it was an interesting experience because they were talking to us about some of the business aspects, because they're more engineering, like everyone that's on there is engineering, so they don't have as much business, so they were trying to get our input for some of that. And also they give scholarships to the local kids for like, to go out and explore, learn more about everything, get them interested in going to college.
Looking back on our study tour, we were given the unique opportunity to live Widener's vision. We had many memorable and lasting experiences that have provided an unparalleled learning experience that could not be achieved in a classroom. The tour enhanced our college experience by shaping our global outlook on businesses as well as culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final presenter today will be Erika Druckenmiller. Erika is a chemistry major who was recommended by Professor Martin, and she'll be speaking on copper complexes of binucleating macrocyclic ligands.
Thank you, Dr. Ligands. And as she said, my name is Erika Druckenmiller, and I am a senior chemistry major. And I will be talking to you today about my research on copper complexes of binucleating macrocyclic ligands. And I know that sounds complicated and everything, so we're going to do a little bit of background. Okay. So what inspired our work are metalloproteins, which have many functions such as transportation, storage, and then metalloenzymes, which are a subset of metalloproteins which undergo catalysis. Many of these metalloproteins contain two transition metals. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, so many of these contain two transition metals in the active site, as I just said, and we're interested in the small and molecule analogs. Now some definitions so we understand what I'll be talking about. A ligand is a molecule with Lewis-based atoms, such as nitrogens, which can bind to a metal. A complex is a ligand with metal ions bound to it. And finally, a substrate is a small molecule that attached to vacant sites on the metal, and they can undergo reactions. Binuclear complexes, these contain two metals, as it states binuclear. They can be the same or they can be different metal complexes. These offer broader ranges of potential reactions compared to single metal sites, such as they can transfer multiple electrons during redox, and they also can, with both metals, combine substrates to them, which facilitate reactions. This is our basic ligand system. We call it the L4, which is just a big ring, and I'll get into that. Now, why this ligand? We chose this ligand because of the diethylene triamine, as you can see in the highlighted red region here with 3 nitrogens. These can bind to the metal and hold that metal strongly. A substrate, as I mentioned already, can be placed between the metal, right here, can be placed between the metal. As you see, the nitrogen only takes up 3 spots of that metal's binding sites. A metal prefers to have 4 to 6 binding sites, which leaves 1 to 3 open for that substrate to bind. Now, the L4 name comes from the 4 carbons that are in this chain. Each point represents a carbon, and there are 4 points in that chain, which gives it the L4 name. And this is unique because you can shorten that chain or you can elongate that chain to make the ring larger or smaller. Now, we're interested in the transition metal complexes. These form almost instantaneously on reaction. They're characteristic of really intense color changes, such as deep blue and deep purple changes. And we are interested in isolating the single crystals in order to perform X-ray crystallography to analyze the structure. These are 2 crystals that we have actually isolated and we have analyzed. The formula that you see up there, Cu2 or the 2 coppers, L4 is what I described already, is the chain. Cl4 are 4 chlorines on the molecules, and the molecule on the left, you can see it has 2 water molecules, which are the red molecules that are hydrogen bonded to the complex. Now the coppers are orange in this structure, the chlorines are green, the nitrogens are purple, and the carbons are the gray. Now this is unique because the structure on the left has the water molecule, and these were synthesized in 2 completely different synthesis schemes, one which excluded water and one which had water present. Now, one with the water is very significant because the distance, as you can see right here, between the copper metals is 5.125 angstroms compared to the one on the right where the distance is only 4.97 angstroms. Now this is believed to tell us that the ring is very flexible, so it can be expanded or shrunk, which can allow for different size bridging ligands to be added to the center of the metals. And right now, Dr. Martin is actually working on a manuscript for this to be published. This is our generic basic bridging ligand synthesis. Now this is the ring that I already had spoken of, and we reacted that with copper triflate instead of copper chloride, because the triflate is less easily to bind to the coppers, leaving those 1 to 3 open binding sites on the coppers. Then that was reacted with a bridging ligand, as you can see here, which in turn we hope to bind to the coppers. So that's just a generic reaction for you. And as I just stated in the synthesis scheme, these are the 4 ligands that we actually reacted with our L4. And each ligand's unique because they can give us different bridge lengths between the coppers. As you can see with N-phenyldiamine, which is the very top one, it has a 5-atom bridge length with the coppers bonding to the nitrogens. The one that we're really interested in is 4,6-dihydroxypyrimidine, which what's interesting about that is the coppers, as you can see, can either bond to the oxygens or they can bond to the nitrogens, giving it either a 5-atom bridge or a 3-atom bridge. All of these reactions have been completed. They did have the intense color changes, as I stated. They were deep blue and deep purples that we saw. We are so far unsuccessful to isolate the crystals, single crystals, which hopefully we will get those so we can get the structural analysis. Our future work, the long-term goal of this work, is to isolate that single crystal structure so we can perform X-ray crystallography on that crystal to analyze the structure of it. And we also want to, once we have the bound substrates successfully bound to those metal sites, we want to see which reactions can undergo on those substrates. We also want to take that ring that I showed you and cut it in half with just one metal site and compare reactions based off of one metal site to show the unique chemistry of a 2-metal site ligand. And a few acknowledgments of the Widener University Provost Grant, which gave us the funds that we needed to perform our research. Dr. Louise Lyle-Sands and Dr. Andrea Martin for assisting me in the research, and also Dr. Glenn Yap at the University of Delaware, who assisted us in getting our crystal structure.
We have time for some questions.
I had a question for Gareth. When you're analyzing substitutions, are you only looking at non-starter substitutes, or are you also looking at like when the starter would come back in?
I was looking at all substitutions. In D3 soccer, you're allowed unlimited amount of subs. So I was just looking at it. So it could have involved a starter going out and starter coming back in. I just had all the subs.
All mixed together.
Other questions?
I have one for Erika.
Oh.
So that one ligand that you're interested in, whether it's going to link to the metals by the 2 nitrogens or the 2 oxygens, there is actually one other way it could link, right?
It could link to the carbons,
Well, it could
to
link
the benzene ring.
or 1-to-1 nitrogen to oxygen.
Right, it could do that also.
Because they're not very different in parts.
Yeah, we're unsure as of right now which way it's going to go. So
But something happened.
something happened. We just don't have the crystals yet to prove what happened. So it's in progress.
Erika, could I just follow up?
Yeah.
What are the obstacles to isolating crystals? What do you have to overcome?
Well, crystal growth takes a long time to begin with. We've been attempting to isolate these crystals since October. So, I mean, I've had pretty much most of this research done since November. So right now it's a very slow process because you need the solution to evaporate off for these crystals to grow. And also, we thought that we didn't do these under water-safe conditions. We did them to regular air. So we're thinking that if we might have done them to just under nitrogen, it would have made a difference also.
Other questions?
I have a question for Erika. What metalloprotein or metalloenzymes do these mimic? So what's the natural, what are they mimicking?
like tyrosinase and hemocyanin, which are very interesting. Hemocyanin is the counterpart of hemoglobin in crabs and mollusks. It carries oxygen, and then tyrosinase activates oxygen, and yet they're very similar in structure, the proteins are. So either activating or carrying oxygen is really the interesting thing.
Other questions?
I had a question for the Costa Ricans. While you were there, did you detect any favorable or unfavorable sentiments towards Americans from the Costa Ricans, or did you detect anything at all? Was there any anti-Americanism, or were they pretty much pro-American?
They're pretty much pro-American. Like we said, a lot of their economy is based off of tourism, so they're very accommodating to all of our needs and anything we did. They were always very friendly to us, trying to help, and it was very accommodating.
I have a question for Emily. And that has to do with archetypes. In terms of the Jungian concept of archetypes, do we have evidence to suggest that there are archetypes that cut across cultures that are found not only in Western culture, but non-Western cultures as well?
Well, in the case of the Jungian archetypes, he focused on the main four, but if you're talking about archetypes in general, there are certain characters or images that are found like in other cultures. Well, the yin yang symbol, which I talked about, is an Asian symbol that we have made into our own culture that we now understand. And basically, when you talk about archetypes, when you're talking about movies or films or papers or books or anything, we've turned that into a different sort of term. So our archetypes would be anyone that's the one typical evil character would be an archetype across the board. So you would find a lot of the same types of characters in any culture.
And that would that have changed over time? Would we have found similarly 100 years ago without technology and the ability to communicate across cultures that we now have?
I doubt we would find the same kind of interaction to the extent that we have now. But I didn't really do any research into that, so I can't give you exact answers.
I'm going to turn the tables and ask the group a question. Is that allowed? It has to do with Emily's presentation. How many of you have actually seen Inception? Okay. Good.
All right, that was the easy question. I have a question. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask her, so Inception's ending, can you give a short interpretation of it? Because the jury's still out on how it actually ended, right?
For what happened at the end?
Yes.
I guess my opinion is that if it was a happy ending, he's out of the dream.
And I have a question for Michelle. Do you think that when you were talking about Blake's limitations in language, do you think that has to do with why he used so much correlating art, whether it's the prophetic books or other writings in which he used his own illustrations?
Yeah, absolutely, I think it did. And I actually, in my paper went into the idea that it was kind of a cyclical thing as well. The more art he did, the more it changed how we viewed words, especially because to make those plates, he was engraving them backwards. So while he's writing, he's already reflecting using a mirror image of words. So he's already disassociating himself from the meaning of the words. So I think it all played together in his crazy, beautiful mind.
Could I ask Michelle a follow-up? Could you talk a little bit further about how you see cognitive theory as potentially useful for the notion of the use of language that
actually just started researching it. It's very hard to find any information on it right now. But do you mean like in the grand scheme of society or just for literature study?
Literature study.
Well, I think it's important because a lot of times when you read a lot of literary criticism, you get frustrated. Well, how do you know that's what he meant? Or like you think that maybe the critic's putting a lot of their own swing on things. And that's why I got really into the cognitive thing, because I wanted to have proof that writers aren't always completely sure where these words come from and what they might pull out. So it's free game for everyone to play in the sandbox.
And does that mean that then we are inevitably open to a multiplicity of interpretations because the reader carries around all of this cognitive architecture that might be quite different from that of the author?
Absolutely.
I have a follow-up question for Michelle. You'll have to excuse my ignorance with this, but have you come across a lot of other writers that seem to have an issue or struggle with the language anxiety?
Well, right now, I started this in a romanticism class, so I did actually look into other romantic poets. And right now I'm doing actually one on William Wordsworth, and he almost even more greatly has pressure because Blake at least had his art to kind of diffuse the anxiety, whereas Wordsworth kind of just starts ranting mid-poem about why can't this be what I want it to mean. So I think it's in modern poetry as well. I think anytime someone is quote unquote at a loss for words, they're struggling with that like cognitive inability to label a thought.
Well, I'd like to thank all of our presenters today and ask Provost Wilhite to help me distribute the certificates. Michelle Callaghan. Mattucci. Charles Bytheway. Keller. Amanda Luce. Rachel Weller. And Erika Druckenmiller.